What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we are back with another reinforcement guide, this time focusing on the fourth and final one of the new reinforcements, the Caphex Spy. Now, I have just done guides for all of the other new reinforcements as well, so if you haven't seen those, then I will leave a link on screen at the end of the video. Now, you can see on screen what we're going to be covering in this video. Hopefully all of this is what you guys are looking for in a reinforcement guide, and if it is, then make sure to smash that like button down below. So anyway, getting stuck straight into the base stats, and starting off, they do have a solid health pool for a reinforcement, coming in at 350 HP, which is pretty much the same as most of the other new reinforcements as well. They do also have the ability to completely regen their health as well, and so unlike heroes, you don't really need to worry too much if you do get down in the low hundreds. Just find some cover and you will regen back to full health. Now, their weapon of choice is the modified Glee 44, which is technically already in the game, but as I said, this one is modified, and so it is very different than the other two versions that we already have. With a shot to the body, the Glee 44 will deal anywhere from 45 to 70 damage per hit, with 45 per hit being the stat from long range and 70 being up close, so obviously at medium range you're looking at something roughly in the middle. As for headshots, they deal roughly 85 damage from long range and 133 up close, which is obviously a pretty decent damage output for a pistol style blaster. Now, because of those high damage stats, it does actually have a pretty slow rate of fire, and a lot of you guys might not actually know this, but it is actually fully automatic, so you don't have to tap the trigger each time, although in my opinion shooting it as if it's a semi-automatic is actually probably the best way to go anyway, but I thought I'd throw that in there nonetheless. As for the ADS, it does have a very zoomed in ADS, which does complement that high damage very nicely, as it can be almost like a DMR style of blaster at long range, and the spread and just overall accuracy is really good as well, so this blaster is clearly much better suited at mid to long range. So that is pretty much it for all of the base stats. All around they are pretty decent, but they do also have a little bit of a slower playstyle compared to some of the others because of that slow rate of fire, so despite being pretty solid, you definitely can't go too crazy with them. Now, moving on to their abilities, and they do have some very decent abilities, and in my opinion they might just have the best ability combination of all the new reinforcements. Their L1 ability is called the Scanner Beacon, and it has a 25-second cooldown, as it is very powerful in pretty much every sense of the word. Throwing this down will reveal nearby enemies for up to 15 seconds, but when you use it outside, it does actually allow you to call in an orbital strike, raining down 8 mortar shots that all deal 50 damage each, for a combination of 400 damage if you can land all the shots. This ability is amazing for throwing down on objectives, not only for revealing enemies, but then also just for that orbital strike, which can be absolutely deadly for your enemies. Its only real downside is that the orbital strike can damage you as well, so just be careful of where you do use it and make sure to steer clear once you call it in. Moving on to their L1 R1 ability, this one is called Rapid Fire, and it has a 10-second cooldown. Now, just as the name suggests, this one turns their regular blaster into a rapid fire version for a short period of time, allowing you to shoot 10 shots in quick succession with no damage drop off, meaning you can still deal the exact same amount of damage as you do without the ability being activated. This ability is amazing against groups of enemies in close quarter situations, and it can also dominate against heroes. For example, if you land all 10 shots at close range against Darth Maul, you can actually kill him from full health within about 2 or 3 seconds, which is definitely pretty insane. Its only downside is that it does stop you from being able to sprint or use your combat rolls, so just be careful of when you decide to use it. Moving on now to the R1 ability, this one is called Truncheon Attack, and it has a very solid 1.5 second cooldown as well as 3 uses before that cooldown starts. This one is essentially just a melee attack, and similar to Phasma's Star Strikes or the BX Vibro Sword, it can be chained together in a combination of 3. Each hit deals 70 damage, and then if you land 2 hits in a row, the following hit will deal 110 damage as well as knocking your enemy to the ground. This ability is really good for those close quarter situations where your blaster just doesn't really feel reliable, and if you get too close for comfort with an enemy saber hero, then you can actually counter them pretty well by landing these hits, dealing 250 damage all up, plus knocking them down and allowing for some extra quick damage. Its only real downside is that it can leave you very open to attack if there are more than 1 or 2 enemies aiming at you, so definitely try and use it mostly in 1v1s whenever possible. So that is it for all of the Spy's abilities. Now I'm going to quickly go through the star cards before heading into some general gameplay tips at the end. Now, I'm only going to touch on the 3 cards that I use for these guys, but their other 2 cards are still pretty decent as well, so if you're not a fan of these cards, then make sure to test them all out for yourselves, as you may actually prefer some of the other ones. So the first card I'd recommend using is the Acquisition card, and this one makes it so that when an enemy damages you, they'll actually receive a little marker on your screen that indicates where they are, allowing you to spot them much easier and then either find the best cover to use, or even just allowing you to take them out much easier since you will know where they are. The second card I'd recommend is the Stalker card, and this one makes it so that you'll receive up to 55 HP each time you get a kill on an enemy that has been revealed by that scanner. Now, this one is kind of situational to be honest, as you can't really use the scanner all that often, but the other cards just aren't that great compared to this one anyway, so I do still think this is one of the better ones to use. Now, the third card I'd recommend is the Interrogation Star card, and this one reveals nearby enemies on your minimap each time you get a kill with your melee attack. I did mention this one for the Sith Trooper, actually saying that it wasn't really worth it, but because these guys do have that deadly truncheon attack, this is actually a solid card to choose because you probably will be getting a lot of melee kills with that ability. Now, those are the 3 cards that I would mainly recommend, although like I said, it is definitely worth checking the other ones out anyway, as there really is no right or wrong when it comes to choosing star cards, since they do suit everyone very differently. Now, lastly, I am just going to give a few quick little tips and strategies to try and put together with those cards and stats that you've already learned, and hopefully it will all tie together and help you guys improve your gameplay. So first off, like I mentioned at the start of the video, these guys do have a bit of a slower strategic type of playstyle due to their blaster being better suited at mid to long range. And so really the first tip I can give is just to not be too aggressive, as you're going to have a hard time surviving in those close quarter situations unless you do have all your abilities at your disposal. Whenever possible, you're definitely better off to keep some distance between yourself and your enemies, as other than when you're facing off against snipers, you're pretty much going to have the advantage at that range against most regular troopers and even most of the reinforcements as well. On top of that, if you always try and have some cover nearby, then you're going to be so dominant at that mid to long range, because if you do take a bit of damage, then you can obviously just slip into that cover, throw down your scanner beacon to make sure there are no enemies pushing you, and then just regen your health before peeking back out and making the most of that range advantage. Now, this does also go without saying because it kind of relates to literally every blaster, but whenever you do get a chance, you should always try and aim for the head with these guys, as they're going to deal at least 100 damage per shot unless you're at a really long range. And so usually just 2 quick shots is enough to take out any class in the game, unless of course they have been buffed or something. Even more so, when you do use that rapid fire ability, then it's even more important to aim for the head if you are a good enough shot, because if you can deal say 120 damage per shot to the head, then that's going to send out about 1200 damage within 2 to 3 seconds, which is enough to take out any full health hero before they even really get a chance to react. Most of the other rapid fire abilities in this game, like Han or Layers for example, really just aren't as good because they generally lower the damage and add a heap of recoil, but with the Caphex Spy there seems to be no damage drop off and really no increase in recoil, other than just the fact that it will obviously be a little bit faster. Just keep in mind though that it does only shoot 10 shots, and so you do have to try and make them all count, otherwise the enemy can make you pay if you can't manage to kill them while it's active. Now, the last tip, and this is a pretty obvious one, is just to try and make the most of that scanner beacon ability, as it's probably one of the best reinforcement abilities in the game, and honestly would probably be a good ability for a hero, so because of that you should try and use it pretty much any chance you can get. I find that it's best to try and throw it down, keep it active for a few seconds, and then call in the orbital strike once you actually know where the enemies are. That way you can not only see them coming, but you will also have a much better idea of how many there are in the area of effect of that orbital strike, and therefore you're going to have some much more successful attempts at those big multi-kills. Like I said though, if you just try and play them a little bit slower than most of the other reinforcements, stick with your teammates and play that support type of role, and just make the most of all 3 of their abilities, then with a bit of practice you guys will be out there dominating with the Spy in no time at all. But anyway guys, that is going to do it for this one. Hopefully some of these tips help you guys out, as the Caphex Spies are probably the hardest of the new reinforcements. They're definitely a decent class to use, but they do just take a little bit of getting used to. If you did enjoy the video guys, then make sure to leave a like down below to help support the channel, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any more Battlefront 2 videos or live streams. Thank you all so much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.